Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another event by WizeGen team. Uh, we have been working on a lot of good stuff for you guys every single week. So please join us every single week at this same hour, Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. Amsterdam time or Central European time, and 5:30 p.m. UK time. We always have these live events. We actually designed it in a way that our friends in the US can also join. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that is very interesting and a platform that is very interesting, and it's actually one of the most popular platforms, social media platforms globally. It is started as a platform, and it's TikTok. So TikTok is started as a platform for younger kids and younger children, and it became like a phenomena by itself. So today, what we want to talk about is actually how TikTok affects your child's brain, and we want to get to know the research and understand the dynamics behind it and the mechanics of this platform, and what most parents actually get wrong and or have been told about as a sort of a myth, and what research has proven about this platform. Now there are lots and lots of studies, by the way, on TikTok. What we do at WizeGen, we as curious techies and curious founders always try to deep dive into the body of literature, Amnesty International reports, child psychology reports, clinical pediatric reports, and papers and peer-reviewed papers. And it's never about what we believe; it's always about what research shows. And we try to be consistent in like at least our knowledge base and our resources, and we get deep into the topics. But as a disclaimer, always talk to experts in the field and try to learn from them and share the problems you might have with your children with experts. We are just here to report on the findings in our curiosity journey. Now, one thing that I want to actually talk about upfront is that TikTok is not an entertainment tool and it's not a social media tool as we think about it. A lot of research has consistently proven that TikTok is a mechanism that is very, very similar to slot machines in casinos. So, in a sense, it's a gambling device. And I will explain. It may sound a little bit weird, but let me explain why it's like that. So, in the, let's say, mind of a user, when you start using something that has like fast novelty and a variable reward system and an infinite supply of like things that you might be potentially interested in, that's a training mechanism that keeps basically shaping your brain and keeps shaping the way you think about this stuff. And that's actually consistently reported to be true about TikTok. Now, TikTok and there's doom scrolling and the scrolling kind of thing that TikTok invented with the short videos. It's actually very different from what we think as a random dopamine spike mechanism. It has a lot of, let's say, features that you can see in gambling, and that's why actually it's extremely difficult to give up TikTok. uh, every swipe is basically like pulling the slot machine lever, and you basically see the reward. It's the reward is unpredictable. It can be funny, it can be sad, it can be shocking or beautiful or whatever. And the unpredictability of this is actually what creates the dopamine hit. So it's not just because you're watching like videos that you like. It's actually the whole, let's say, system designed behind like the gambling machines. And this has been basically proven throughout several studies with more than 100,000 users, and the result was consistent and same. So the variable reward bypasses the prefrontal control mechanism by design. And let me explain how this might potentially affect your child's kind of way of thinking. Basically, again, we keep coming back to this in our every event that we talk about different platforms or different mechanisms, but basically, by design, human basically biology and the evolutionary aspect of it has some deep roots in what we see here. Now, for instance, in this system, you want the child to be curious and you want the child to basically crave for unpredictability and crave for difficulty and learning from, let's say, what you see. And this mechanism is what actually is very strong, especially in the younger kind of kids, ranging in the age range of somewhere between 8 to, let's say, 13 to 15. In this age range, you really want the child to basically, at least from the evolutionary perspective, you want the child to be curious and you want the child to be open to the unpredictable stuff so that they actually start learning stuff, right? Now, this is by design in a human biology and human kind of evolutionary perspective, is going to basically create less of a break in your prefrontal control system and more of architectural kind of craving for new stuff. This is exactly what these platforms are exploiting in a sense. Now it's embedded in the feature of a social media platform like TikTok. A bit later, if you're my generation, you will remember that actually there was a time that Instagram didn't have this real mechanism or this real sort of feature, and TikTok introduced it, and many other platforms actually started to adopt it because it was actually very nicely working, at least for the platforms. And now the question is, or shouldn't be basically whether TikTok releases dopamine. The question should be whether your child is or your child's brain is hurting from this, or it's actually learning every time they deal with like a situation like this, or deal with like doom scrolling or scrolling. Now, unfortunately, the way the conventional wisdom, especially like my generation, deals with situations like this is to start by looking at ways that are more control oriented. And this is because my generation, I'm 44, my generation actually grew up in a system that we thought, okay, if you want to ban like a system, you can just basically unplug a phone, literally a physical phone, and you will not have access to phone. Or you can turn off a device like a Nintendo device at old days or a Sega device or computer. You will basically unplug it and basically the access is gone. Now with the new systems, it is not true. You are always on. You can always find a way to bypass these systems. That's the number one thing. And the second thing is that these control things, we usually think of it in terms of like limitations, like for instance, screen times. At WizeGen, we have done many interviews with parents, and we understood that number one, let's say, tool that parents use in order to deal with these situations is that they basically opt for control mechanisms, and within the control camp, they always opt for instance, a screen time control. I want to give you some stats that will show you the depth of the, let's say, problem and how these small sort of control mechanisms will never solve this problem. Now, if you have a child and your child, especially for instance in young girls, young women, if they are exposed to only 8 minutes of, let's say, weight-centric content, a content that is gonna basically one way or another deal with like weight, a human weight, body weight, this is gonna immediately create like a massive increase of, let's say, body dissatisfaction, lower self-esteem, and your, let's say, negative self-image immediately. Now, it's only 8 minutes. I'm just gonna emphasize that it's only 8 minutes. Now, if you go to like the content virality and content, not content virality, content rabbit hole and content, let's say, algorithms, 20 minutes of exposure to even light engagement and exposure to a specific type of content can create 50% of a simulated environment that is more towards like a mood enhancing idea, especially starting from the ages of 13 years old. And these are like well documented research, I want to say. Now, what do I mean by that? So if you are, for instance, I've tried this many times. By the way, I have like TikTok screen open on the other side. Every time that we talk about these things, we will always experiment these things as well. And we have actually even created some really fantastic games or lab kind of experiments that you can explore on our website. We want to say that if you engage very lightly with some certain type of content, let's say food, for instance, as time passes, like within 20 minutes, the algorithm starts to enhance, and you basically much more deeply grounded in the rabbit hole and move into the rabbit hole of specific content. I see that Reza is sharing something. Let me see what Reza is saying. Reza is, oh, it's a question by Ethan, sorry. According to your experience, does a child know what the algorithm is doing to them, or do they think For You page is just luck? Uh, Very great question, Ethan. Thank you very much for the question. I want to say from our, at least it's not a research study, but from our experiments with kids who are playing around with our apps, almost everybody certainly say it's luck, right? They don't believe in, or not they don't believe, they don't understand the, let's say, algorithm and the enhancement of a specific mood behind this. And I want to give you like a personal example, especially at nights when you are a little bit tired and you want to basically engage with lighthearted, let's say, or simpler content. You see, if you follow your TikTok, you see that within, let's say, very few minutes, your algorithm starts to enhance your mood, especially towards, let's say, more lighter content, and then it gets sad or depressive. Now, research shows that 63.8% of, let's say, kids in the US use the social media platforms below the platform age. Now, imagine you have a child who cannot deal specifically with the specificity of the platforms. They don't know exactly what they are doing. And there is like a mood enhancer drug where they are using it and their mood gets accentuated in a sense. This is very important stuff, guys. We have to be very cautious about this. I want to actually give you like some quick stats as well because we are almost running out of time. So 6.3% of the US kids between the age of 11 to 15 have like a second secretive account or secret account hidden from their parents. So meaning that if you think that you are banning your child from a specific platform, doesn't mean they are not using it. At least from the research, we understood that like 5 to 6% of the kids that we think they don't have an account on a platform, they might have an account. Um, a lot of kids in the UK, like I think 30% of the 5 to 7 years old kids in the UK have TikTok accounts. Now imagine, we're talking about kids at the age of 5 to 7. 30% of them have TikTok accounts, personal TikTok accounts. And less than 5% of the kids in the UK use family pairing actively, a family pairing device where you can basically monitor your child's activity on these platforms. So again, guys, we are dealing with a crisis here when we are talking about platforms like TikTok. But the most important thing is that you cannot just ban your child from these platforms. You have to just understand the platform, understand the nuances of the platform, and how we are basically dealing with this and how it's actually shaping your child's brain and how it's actively benefiting from like a specific age related biological aspects of your child's brain and exploiting it to the benefit of the platform. So we talked about a little bit about like what everyone gets wrong. Now I want to actually very quickly tell you what moves you can do to at least do your part from our research that can move the needle in a sense. Now, stop counting minutes, right? Everybody that we talk to, I mean, I think Reza will agree with me, my co-founder is on the call as well. I think he will agree with me that we have never seen like even one parent throughout our research that they do not use one form or another way of, let's say, controlling the minutes, like screen time, either through an app or through like physical discussions or in real world discussions and say, okay, enough, you have used your 1 hour, let's stop, right? Now, I told you and I showed you that it's not about minutes. Even 8 minute exposure to a specific type of content can accentuate what your child thinks and basically creates like a mood that is actually deepening the specific mood that the child might have or might not even have, but it actually creates that. So it's not about the minute, right? But one thing I would highly recommend, and we recommended this on Roblox discussion, we recommended it when we were talking about when your child might potentially talk to strangers. We always talk about you have to understand the platform and you have to understand what is happening. So if you sit next to your child and for like, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just have them scroll and see what they wait on, what they like, what they do, you will see a pattern emerging, right? One of the parents that we talked to quite recently was telling us that he was worried that his son is actually exposed to radical ideas on TikTok, right? We're talking about radical right-wing movement ideas or a specific type of content. And he was saying he was shocked because this has never been like any discussion in the family. They are coming from a super liberal, let's say, family, but specifically because the child was engaging with this sort of content and reading through it, all the feed on the TikTok kind of platform for the child was about, let's say, these radical ideas. Now you have to understand this. You have to understand how the mechanics of this algorithm works for your child, and what your child is exposed to in order for you to be able to talk to your child. Now, one final thing that I want to actually leave you with is that try to at least set one rule, and we keep coming back to this rule across different platform discussions and across different, let's say, digital literacy discussions that we have with parents, and that's actually keep the phone out of the bedroom. It's non-negotiable at night, specific hours. I recently saw, actually, I think it was on World Economic Forum that reported that in Japan they're introducing some sort of digital curfew for children. From a specific hour, all social media companies are not allowed to have any children on them from a specific age range, right? But you can do that at home as well. You can say, okay, from this hour, no social media, no phone. You cannot bring your phone into the bedroom, and that's it. This is a non-negotiable rule. Now, obviously, we have always been curious about what can happen when you are using these things alone. But one thing I want to actually talk about is we also recently understood the impact of these platforms on the sleeping patterns and how this can actually influence the mood on the day after, right? So again, this would be like a very interesting thing that you can do to basically help your child at least navigate the situations on TikTok a little bit easier. Okay, let me see if we have, maybe we can just answer one question because we are almost out of time. So Laura, when something upsetting happens to the children online, do they tell us? Should we actively intervene in their experience in online situations? Fantastic question, Laura. Thank you very much for the question. I want to actually tell you one thing that, again, we keep coming back to, and that's the fact that you have to be able to manage your emotions when you're talking to your children, right? No drama, no dramatic reactions, no, let's say, immediate banning of the platform and things like that. Always be very calm, always respect their privacy, but at the same time, try to actually understand the situation and have the child always tell you this by telling them, if you tell me, there will be no consequence, you will not be grounded, you will not be banned from the platform. I'm here to help you, I'm here to support you. And that level of, let's say, collaboration with your child in a specific situations, like harmful situations, can go a long way. And research is consistent on this. Your children become, let's say, secretive and do not tell you stuff because of your reactions, right? So you have to be very calm, but you also at the same time have to keep evidences of the harmful stuff that can happen, especially if there is a third party involved, so that you can actually bring that to authorities. Guys, we are out of time. We always try to keep these events very short, bite-sized event for our friends in the US. We want this, it's their early morning, so we want this to be bite-sized. For our friends in Europe, it's actually their evening time, so we want them to be able to enjoy the family time. So we keep this consistently very short. Hope these discussions are useful and open future discussions about these platforms as well. Have a wonderful evening and talk to you all very soon. Cheers.